Programs marking the countdown to Easter. Kingdom Come.
Haven't you always wanted one of these? There were never this many toys when I was a kid. Brilliant. Of course, there are times when most of us would swap being a grown-up for being a kid again. No worries. We could play all day. Brilliant. Of course, the downside is that you have to do what you're told by your parents. Not brilliant. But then you're never really free from being a kid because there's always him up there in the sky making the rules. So who checks your homework?
I can still remember the day I learnt to swim, the sudden panic when I realised I was in deep water. Talking about the Lord's Prayer sounded easy at first. I can do that, I thought. But suddenly I'm out of my depth, without my armbands on. It's the first word that's the problem. We say, Our Father, but Jesus didn't. He said Abba in his language, Abba, the young child's word for daddy. Not a childish word, but a childlike word. A word of trust and love, authority and risk. But why risk? Because if God is a loving parent to us, then we are brother and sister to each other, even to people we'd rather not know, even the homeless and the hungry. How can we say, Abba, dear Father, if we don't love each other? Suddenly we're plunged deep into the meaning of the gospel, deep into the mystery of God, and suddenly we're out of our depth.
Good morning. You're very welcome to the Chapel of Trinity and All Saints University College in Leeds. Now, over the next 6 weeks, we're going to be blowing the dust off something that most people may only vaguely remember these days, the Lord's Prayer. And today we're going to be looking at the opening words, Our Father, and finding out how people at the end of the 20th century relate to an idea that's nearly 2,000 years old. We'll be finding out what the students of this college get up to when they're not in lectures. And our music today is led by the Choir of St. Anne's, the Roman Catholic Cathedral here in Leeds.
God our Father, you have created us for love. You have called us into relationship with you and one another, that we may experience the joys and the hopes, the excitement and the serenity, the peace and the security of truly loving. Strengthen our relationship with you, that we may appreciate and understand more deeply this amazing mystery of your life. We ask this of you, who have revealed yourself as a loving parent of us all. Amen.
Well, the community here at Trinity and All Saints College is certainly a close-knit one, but what goes on here in the chapel is just a small part of what they get up to the rest of the week. Hello, and welcome to Trinity and All Saints.
We are young, we run green, we got tea, nice and clean. See our friends, see the sights, feel alright. We wake up, we go out, smoke a pipe, put it out. See our friends, see the sights, feel alright.
Said, baby, I don't really wanna know where you gotta grow. 'Cause I just wanna fly. Said lately, did you ever feel the pain? The morning rain soaks you to the bone. Baby, I will never be all the things that I'd like to be. Now is not the time to cry. Now's the time to find out why. I think you're the same as me. We see things they'll never see. And I gotta live forever.
This is TCR.
In that verse from Isaiah, the writer recognizes that God's love for him is as limitless as a parent's for a child. But whatever we understand or have experienced in terms of the parent-child relationship, the nature of that relationship does change. So if God is constantly addressed as Father, are we trapped into always being his children? Well, Anne Brindle's a student here at the college. Her family now consists of Tony and baby Daniel, but they haven't come together through the most conventional route. Tony, can you tell us your story?
I was trained for the Catholic priesthood when I first met Anne, and Anne was pregnant with Daniel from her first marriage. And I left college to be with Anne and to take up a father's role for Daniel.
Right, okay. And Anne, I know you're a student here. What are you studying?
Theology and secondary education, training to be an RE teacher.
Right, okay. And so it's Anne and Tony's experience that has shaped their ideas of what God is all about.
I've always had a strong relationship with God, though of course not constantly so. Leaving home, somehow my faith waned and I stopped going to church. And it was during that time that I met and married my first husband. In some ways it was a happy marriage. We were very affectionate, very close, but it couldn't work. It wasn't right. And I became very unhappy during the marriage. And really, I think, if anything, it was because I was so unhappy that I began to seek God again, and my faith was reawakened, and I began to pray regularly. An hour a day I would spend in prayer, like I was running to God to hide. I have this image of God as a mother, and I think in that period, though at that time I wouldn't have recognised it as such, it was as though I was hiding in my mother's skirts. And then eventually, praise God, I met my present husband, whom we fell in love. I was able to divorce. We've got an annulment, and now we've been able to marry. And of course, Daniel came on the scene, and Tony has wonderfully taken on the role of father to Daniel, and he's making a fantastic job of it.
Thank you for the master. Thank you. Because of my relationship with Daniel, I can understand this image of God being a loving father a lot easier now.
That's lovely.
Because my mother died when I was young, my relationship with my dad was quite strong. We became best friends, so to speak. We'd always confide in each other and ask each other for advice. Even though I was only very young, my dad still turned to me for kind of problems with the house and whatnot and family life and things. And that helped me to kind of develop a different idea of who God is. Because I was best friends with my own father, it helped me to kind of see God as a best friend.
I don't find God as a father a useful image for me, a useful metaphor for God. Far more useful for me is to image God as mother, because that has a much more direct relationship with my own experience through my motherhood of Daniel. I remember particularly in the hospital when Daniel had just first been born, the overwhelming sense of responsibility that I felt towards this child, and the overwhelming love and protectiveness I felt as though I wanted to always hold him very close to me and never let anything come near to hurt him, to surround him with love. But then later on you understand that actually you don't just want to hold the child close to yourself, you want to help them to get up and to walk and to begin to relate to the world and to be confident and to launch out, really. That really has given me a wonderful insight into the way that God feels towards me and God's hopes for me, that I will too grow up and launch out and be able to deal with things myself.
So, Anne, you've said in that clip that you realise that through Daniel, that parents must at some point let go. Do you feel that perhaps God has let you go and go through your experiences?
Oh yes, absolutely. There was great suffering, and I really felt held and carried, but at the same time I felt released that I had the right to make my own decisions and to carve my own path in life.
Right. So you felt God was there, even though maybe he wasn't interfering?
That's correct, yeah, that's absolutely as it was, yes,
Right.
and is.
Right. Tony, do you think that although you've said that you've reached the stage now where you feel you have an adult relationship with God, do you think there are still times when you need to approach God as a child?
Yeah. When I left college, I went through a big change of leaving seminary and then taking up a kind of husband and father role. And there was a lot of time then when I needed to turn to God as a child and just go to God for hugs and love, basically. But even though I had this adult relationship with him, I still needed to go as a child, so to speak.
Right. Why do you think Jesus gave us this image of God as Daddy, if we need to really mature in our faith?
I think it doesn't matter how old you are or how kind of deep your relationship with God is, that you can still be intimate with him, even though you're an adult. You can still have an adult relationship with him, but still have an intimacy as a child would do, so to speak.
Right. Any particular image of God to you, Anne, that has been particularly helpful to you, now that you are a mother? I mean, you've seen God as mother?
Yes, I do see her as mother, very much so in my prayer life and the way that I think of her. I think I spoke in the film there about this idea of God as someone in whose skirts you would hide, and also as someone who's launching you out into life, and a real insight through the image of motherhood into the way that God feels towards me and God's hopes for me and wishes for me.
Right. Well, thank you all very much, and Daniel, for coming this morning. I'm sure we'll see more of you later on in the program.
Yes.
At the end of a long day, in which so much has happened to each of us, I say the Our Father with my children. They're still damp from the bath and dressed in pyjamas, ready for bed. Sometimes they sit down on their beds alone and look round for a book or a toy. Don't they understand? And I thought that it might have sunk in a bit deeper. That's the image that we see when we say Father. Does that go very deep? Is it firmly fixed in their heads as an old man, tall, short, fat or thin? That's not important. What is important is that it is a man. Do I have to explain to my children that God is not a man, that he's also not a woman? What did he want to show us with the word Father? Man in his totality? We may be wrong about the strict image that the same prayer evokes for others. When I use this prayer, it sometimes passes through my mind, he can never take over my life and my cares, or can he? He could if he wanted to, but does he really want to? No, he wants us to take our own decisions, choose our own course, be true to ourselves. In his love for us, he wants us to come of age. There are no protective arms to embrace us. God doesn't take the pain of life away and give us firm certainties. What he does do is guide us and let us know that he loves us in our right decisions and despite our wrong ones.
Dr. John Alba Metcalf is a lecturer in education here at the college, but he still makes time for his hobby, art. So we're setting him a challenge this morning to see if he can come up with an image based on ideas about God. Now, John, you've been developing an image through 2 pictures already, so can you tell us what you're thinking?
Yes, this is the first image, a stereotyped image of God, our mother and father, who is apart or separate from the world. He's, or she is, above the mountains, higher than the clouds, but at the same time, who's concerned to be a nurturing and sometimes critical parent to us, telling us that she loves us, and
right. And who's this right here?
This is Moses coming down the hill, carrying one of God's messages to the people. In this case, it's written down on some great heavy chunks of stone.
Right. Okay. So that's sort of God, the critical parent. Who's the next image that
critical
you've got?
And nurturing, yes.
Right. And this is.
And this is God among us. Image here of Jesus, God's Son, our brother and sister. Some little children here. They come out for the day with their baby. Jesus sitting down there at the same level as them, talking to them as equals, talking to them about love and about understanding themselves and their relationships with each other and with God.
Right, okay. And so behind here is a blank sheet of paper.
Behind here is a blank sheet of paper.
Okay, and so you're going to be getting on with that, and we'll come back just before the end of the program to see what we've got.
Good.
Thanks very much.
Lord, when as your children we feel insecure, when we're called in your name to move forward in faith, when the world misunderstands and we feel we have failed, even when your presence feels real and our hearts are at peace,
Perhaps one of the best-known Bible stories about relationships is one about a forgiving father, although it's commonly called the prodigal son. It begins with a young man who's had enough of home, takes everything due to him, and sets off to have a good time. When his money runs out, he comes to his senses and decides to return home.
But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him, and kissed him. The son said to him, "Father, I have sinned against heaven, and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son." But the father said to his servants, "Quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found." So they began to celebrate. Meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard music and dancing. So he called one of the servants and asked him what was going on. "Your brother has come," he replied, "and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound." The older brother became angry and refused to go in, so his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, "Look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him." "My son," the father said, "you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found."
I'm aware that some people struggle with the word father, especially when it's applied to God. Maybe in their own lives they didn't have a relationship with their father at all for any one of a number of different reasons. Or it may be that they did have a relationship with their father, but it wasn't a happy one. I'm also aware that there are some who struggle with the whole gender idea of God as a father. Maybe they would want God to be a mother, or at the very least they would like God to be a parent, so that both the mother and the father content in parenthood could be included. What I find more interesting, though, is the developing relationship that takes place between ourselves and a parent-type figure, whoever that person might be in your life. For instance, when I think back upon my own relationship with my father and how it developed through the years, quite a lot of change took place. My father was a policeman, and when I was a small boy, he was a remote figure. He was a strict person and often not there, and I used to really struggle to have any relationship with him at all. When I was a little older, around the ages of 8 or 9, I began to enjoy my dad. We'd play cricket and football together in the backyard. He'd take me to watch Nottingham Forest. He'd take me to test matches at Trent Bridge. I got interested in him and was even quite proud of him when he got promoted to be a sergeant. As a teenager, the relationship got a bit more iffy. I was beginning to engage in all sorts of dodgy activities like teenagers do, and there's a lot of what I was doing that I didn't want my dad to know about. When I left school and started looking for a job, my father became very useful to me. Certainly financially, he aided me a great deal, and also in terms of experience of life and knowledge of the world. He was ready to share it with me, and I was equally ready to hear it. When I got married and our children were born, my father became a very benevolent grandfather, and as he was able to be soft with them, so he softened towards me as well. In the last 10 years of his life, there was a gentleness and a wisdom in him, and a trust between us that was lovely. It really surprised me, although it didn't seem to surprise him, because he had had a similar relationship with his father. Can a relationship with God be measured along similar lines? Well, I would hope so in one important respect. Just as at the human level, we are born into a family as a child to two parents, we do hope that that relationship will develop through friendship to love, respect, trust, and mutual appreciation. In the same way, with God, our Father, we are invited to come to him as children to a father, and yet he hopes and invites us to enter into a relationship with him by listening to him, by speaking to him, by understanding him better, that will develop into a friendship and a trust and respect. Oscar Wilde said that to lose one parent is a misfortune, to lose both parents looks like carelessness. I would say that to know one father is a privilege, to know two fathers is a miracle.
And so, as we turn to our prayers, we begin by thinking of all the ways in which we let our horizons be limited, our enthusiasm for life be dampened, our desire to grow simply turned into apathy. God, the Father of all life, we are made in your image that we may have life and have it to the full. And yet, so often we have chosen to reject your gift, turn down the possibilities you offer us, and hinder others in their efforts to live as children of yours. Creator of all life, we are made in your image that we may have life and have it to the full.
O God of all life, you have shown us the compassion and the care of a true father. May our hearts be moved today to remember especially those fathers who are unable to provide for their children. We remember especially those who are unemployed or experiencing financial crises, those who are separated from their families for prolonged periods, and those single parents who carry the responsibility of being both father and mother to their children. Our Father in heaven, hear our prayer for all your children. God of all love, in our relationships, may we learn to love each other as we are loved by you. May we offer to our relatives, our friends, and our colleagues our respect for them and their dignity. Help us to set our horizons beyond our own narrow ones and to trust you as the one who can draw out of us more than we can ourselves imagine. Our Father in heaven, hear our prayer for all your children.
Thy
Gracious God, you bring us together from many different places. You endow us with varied gifts and responsibilities. You challenge us to respond to your call. Guide our multi-nation steps, sustain us and help us sustain each other, that through our labors we may bring into the world your love, your peace, and your goodness. Through Jesus, your Son, and our brother. Amen.
Well, John has been drawing away here. John, we talked this morning about growing in our understanding of God, and you've already done 2 pictures. So now, what have you come up with for the third one?
Well, the theme is now moving towards God the Spirit, God as being within us. And I've chosen a very ordinary scene of people talking to each other, an everyday action. It could be Leeds or London, Venice or Venezuela, anywhere.
And it's an open-ending relationship.
It's an open-ending relationship, yes.
Right, okay. Right. Well, thanks very much for that, John.
Thank you.
Well, I hope there's been plenty of food for thought here this morning. And if you want to take up any of the issues that we've talked about this morning, then here's the address to write to. Kingdom Come, BBC North, Oxford Road, Manchester, M61SJ, or you can ring us on 0161 237 5550. And if you'd be interested in hearing the Lord's Prayer explored in other ways, then you might like to listen to the daily service just after 10 o'clock every morning, this week on Radio 4 Longwave. Next week we'll be here again, thinking about the idea of something being hallowed. And I'll be starting off at the hallowed turf of Elland Road, home of Leeds United Football Club. Until then, from all of us at Trinity and All Saints, goodbye.